Welcome, everyone, to today's Town of Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. The date is July 22nd, 2021. This meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please let us know. The meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted remotely in accordance with Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 and shall afford adequate alternate means of public access via Microsoft Teams by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, and then you must punch in the conference ID number, which is 430-711-490, and then hit the pound. Or you can join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, and we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue, hearing, or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair, which is done through the lady on my right. So to begin with, we will have a roll call of all members to authorize this form of meeting. And incidentally, this will also be true at our next meeting on August 12th. And then on August 26th, we hope to go to in-person applicants and members of the public, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, so Paul, would you please make a motion to authorize this?
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to authorize the meeting by vote.
Paul, you have to hit the button.
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to authorize this meeting to convene on a remote basis.
David DeVito seconds.
Okay, I'll ask everyone to please give your full name, such as it, and to authorize this. We'll start with Buck.
James M. Upson here, or I guess I'm voting for,
Yes.
Hit the button, otherwise they can't hear you.
mention that. James M. Upson, voting for the recommended or the motion to hold the meeting as presented.
Okay, Megan?
Megan Story, voting in the affirmative.
Paul C. Semple, voting affirmative.
David R. Thompson, voting in the affirmative.
David S. Nixon, voting in the affirmative.
David H. Veach, voting yes.
Randy J. Potash, voting in the affirmative.
Okay. I will say that the meeting will be conducted by having the hearing notice read by Sarah B. Clark. Sarah B. Clark is the lady to my right. She's a Town of Chatham employee. She's the PPO, that's the principal permitting officer for the town, as well as the executive secretary for this board, and also the HBDC. And also with us today, we have Chantel Kilkenny, who is with us. She takes the notes, she helps out Sarah and all kinds of folks around here, and is also a town employee. So after the hearing notice is read, then we'll have an application presentation, either by the applicant or some representative. When that's done, we will ask for anybody who wishes to speak in favor in the audience to do so. And to do this, you have to indicate on the screen so that Sarah can see that you want to speak, so that she can pick it up and we can invite you into the meeting. After that, I would read any and all correspondence that we might have. Then we would ask for anybody who wishes to speak either against the appeal or has a specific question asked to do so. Again, the same process. Indicate so that Sarah can see you on the screen and that we can invite you into the meeting. When that's done, board members would have an opportunity to ask questions. When that's done, we would ask that we would go into deliberation by closing the hearing, and that's done on a vote by the board. Once that's done, the public input is not accepted unless a board member invites an individual into the discussion. A little convoluted, but that's what happens. We're still working on roll calls. Once we're done with this in 2 weeks, we'll go back to raising your hand, but we still have to do roll calls today. So at the end of the meeting, we're going to close it by, again, a verbal thing as opposed to raising your hand. So with that, we go to the first order of business today, which is a executive session. This is to discuss strategy with respect to litigation. The litigation has to do with 75 Hallway Street, the Barsamian property. And I believe that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating process. So it is under my authorization that we are going to go into an executive session. So Paul, I need a motion for that, please.
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to move into executive session for purposes of discussing litigation.
David Veach seconds.
Okay, then the regular board members are voting, so that would mean Buck,
Buck votes yes.
Paul,
Paul Semple votes yes.
Dave,
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Dave,
Dave Veach votes yes.
Dave, I vote yes. So there we go. Okay, we're going into executive session, so I think we have to wait until we get the high sign from Mark in Studio 18, or Channel 18. So
Yes, Mr. Riley, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Okay. So we just finished the executive session, and we're ready to start the meeting now.
Okay.
Great.
So
I can't hear Dave.
hi. Welcome back to our regular meeting. There's a couple of things I want to say before we go on. And number one, for regular viewers, you'll notice that there's quite a change on the board. We have, since last July 1st, we have 2 new regular members, and they are Buck and Dave Thompson. And we have 3 new associates. We have Megan, we have Randy, and also there's Bill Grau, who is not with us today, but all new faces. And it's great. It's very welcome, and thank you for all volunteering for this. I would be shortchanging 2 people who really managed to get us through the 16 months. Number one is Mrs. Clark, who ran our end of the show from her studio, which I think was either your dining room or your living room or whatever it was. It was from her home in Eastham, and you did that seamlessly, I thought. Really, really. And number 2, Mark Van Bork, who is part of the boys in the studio here, was our producer for the great part of that. Also, Dallas Weller helped him out. So thank you, gentlemen, very much, and thank you, Sarah, for getting us through it. I thought it was kind of a trial for me, and I'm sure you all thought that listening to me. So let's begin. What do you think? We'll start with application 19-008.
Application number 19-008, Joan Ann Barsamian, care of William F. Riley Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 75 Hallway Street, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 17C, Block 26, Lot 22. On remand from the Land Court, the applicant seeks the grant of a special permit for the construction of an addition and deck. On February 28, 2019, the applicant was denied special permit number 19-008. The existing dwelling is non-conforming and that it is located 49.5 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District. The proposed addition will comply with all setback requirements of the bylaw. The proposed deck will be non-conforming in that it will be located 45.4 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District, where a 50-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 1,117 square feet, 10.6%, and the proposed building coverage is 1,172 square feet, 11.1%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 10,551 square feet of buildable upland, where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Mr. Riley, the floor is yours. If you'd like it. Do we see him?
So I'm not exactly how you want to proceed. I can run down the proposed changes for you and give you the criteria again, if you think that would be the best way to move forward.
Yes, I do, Mr. Riley.
All right, so the proposal before you today is to add a small addition on a lower level, about 57 square feet. And over that is going to be a deck that would provide access from a new side door on the building that would provide access to the deck in the front of the building. Right, so if you want to put your little hand on the where the new deck's going to lead out to the front deck. Sarah, on the right elevation. Yeah, okay, yeah, all right, so yeah, all right. But up a level. up a little bit. There you go. Now over to the right-hand side. A little further. No, further right. There you go. Okay, so that is a new deck. The sole purpose of it is to provide access to the deck on the front of the building. In addition to the 57 square foot extension of the building on the lower level, there will also be a support post on the southeast corner of the deck, which is shown on the rear elevation. Right, that's the one. Other than that, there's no change in the building. I'd be happy to run through the criteria now.
Fine.
So adequacy of the size of the site, including but not limited to maximum lot or building coverage. So our proposed existing building, it covers 1,092 square feet. And the proposed addition adds 55 square feet to that. So I would suggest that, and because it's on the lower level, and it meets the setback to the top of the coastal bank, that our site is adequate for the proposed change. The proposed deck, which will be 45 feet from the top of the coastal bank, really has no mass. It does have a handrail and a screen, but there's no mass to it. So we would suggest that, although it is a slight increase in nonconformity, it's not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. Compatibility of the size of the proposed structure with neighboring properties. As you know from visiting the site, our house is the smallest house in the neighborhood. The building immediately to the east, which is owned by the Chapman family, is substantially larger. The building, actually, the building to the north is owned by the Chapman family. The building to the west, which is owned by the Wayland Weber family, is an antique that's significantly larger. And as you go down Hallway Street towards Main Street, the homes are all substantially larger than our structure. So we would say that to the extent the existing structure is compatible, it remains compatible despite the small increase. Increase in non-conforming nature of the structure. Because the lot is undersized and we are increasing the living space on the lower level by adding a bathroom and 57 square foot extension, there is a slight increase in the living area on the building, which is considered an intensification of the non-conforming nature of the structure. We also are proposing a deck, which will be at one point 46 feet from the top of the coastal bank, where 50 feet is required. And that also would be an increase in the non-conforming nature of the structure. Suitability of the site, including but not limited to impact on neighboring properties, on the natural environment, including slopes, vegetation, wetlands, groundwater, and water bodies. We had been through Conservation Commission hearings on this matter, and they had, my memory is, and I don't have it in front of me, but that they had indicated that they could issue an order of conditions that would allow the construction of this building. So we would suggest that, given the nature of the lot as it exists today, that the site is suitable for the proposed work. The question 5, impact of scale, siding, and mass on neighborhood visual character. The proposed addition is very hardly visible from the street. The Weber family, which owns the property to the west on the antique, appeared at the initial zoning meeting and stated that he had no objection to the proposed changes. I don't believe any of the other homes in the neighborhood are even capable of seeing it. So we don't believe that there's any impact on the streetscape. There's certainly no impact on the views and vistas, and it doesn't change the the visual character of either this building or the neighborhood itself. Accordingly, we think that this change is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing structure. Question 6, compatibility of the proposed use with neighboring uses. And it's just a very modest extension of a single-family residence. All the other homes in the neighborhood, with the exception of the Surfside Inn, are single-family residents. So we believe we are compatible with those uses. There's no change or proposed change in the method of sewage disposal, which is an on-site septic system. Again, because we're only adding 55 square feet, we don't think there's any impact on traffic flow and safety or noise and litter. The utilities and public services are all adequate, as this is an established neighborhood. So that would be our presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this? If so, please indicate now so that Sarah can see on the screen that you wish to speak.
I see no one that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
I'll read the correspondence. The first is dated July 20th. It's from Nicole Smith. She is our conservation agent here in the town. Conservation issued a permit in 2019 for this project. The plans submitted to the ZBA match the approved conservation plans. The conservation permit does not expire until 2024 due to COVID extension. Then we have a memo. This is from Judith Giorgio, health agent for the town. She writes on 7/14, I have reviewed the plan to renovate the existing house. The dwelling is deed restricted to 3 bedrooms and has an IA septic system. The proposed plan will not increase the septic flow. The proposed addition and deck do not encroach on the existing septic system nor restrict access to the system ports. I have no concerns. And then we have a note. This is from Michelle Clark. She writes, as of this date, which was July 7th, the Historical Commission has not received a filing for 75 Hallway Street. Do you know if they have subsequent to this, Sarah?
They,
No, I can tell you they have not.
Okay. Do you plan to do that?
Absolutely.
Ah.
As soon as this, we've already drafted the application. It's ready to go in.
Okay. All right, that's the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak against this application or has a specific question? Please indicate so that Sarah can see on the screen that you wish to speak.
I see no one that wishes to speak in opposition or has a specific question.
Okay, I'll check the board and see if anyone has any questions. Dave Veach.
Dave Veach has no questions.
Randy.
Randy has no questions.
Buck.
Buck has no questions.
Megan.
Megan has no questions.
Paul.
Bill, at the time of the last hearing in 2019, there was some discussion about vegetation and maintenance of the vegetation. Can you tell me what the status of that is now?
My understanding, I've not been down there recently, Paul. My understanding was when that issue was raised in correspondence by one of the neighbors, I notified the Barsamian family that the restriction that had been agreed to by them at the time of the original permit to allow work done was still in full force and effect and had to be, and so that actually prior to our last meeting, the hedges were trimmed down to the 3 feet, and as far as I know, they remain there.
So at this point, we don't know, but we assume that the hedges are being trimmed to the height that they were said they were going to be trimmed to?
That's correct. In other words, I agree with the zoning board members that requirement continues in effect
Okay,
indefinitely.
I have no other questions.
Dave Thompson.
I have no questions, Mr. Nixon.
Okay, Paul, a motion?
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Okay, we need a vote on that, Buck.
Buck votes affirmative.
Paul?
Paul votes affirmative.
Dave?
Dave votes affirmative.
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, let's start with Buck.
I guess I'm going to support it.
Megan?
I will support it as well.
Paul?
Yes, I think we should approve the application. I guess my question for Bill would be, do we need some conditions with respect to construction and timeframes, given the congested area down there?
I think, given the sort of minimal nature of the proposed project, I would suggest that a condition that requires construction vehicles to be located off the street and on the lot should be sufficient.
Okay.
Are you concerned about the time frame, Paul?
Well, what time frame do you have in mind, Bill? Do you know?
I really don't know. I can't imagine they want to do the work in the summertime, since the family's in residence down there now.
So do you think it would be appropriate to have a condition which said there would be no construction prior to Labor Day of 2021?
I think that would be acceptable.
Okay. I think that I intend to vote favorably with those two conditions.
Dave Thompson?
I agree with Paul. I agree with Paul.
Dave Veach?
Yes, I can find that it meets the criteria, and with those conditions, I can support it.
Randy?
I would say that it meets the criteria, therefore, if I were voting, I'd vote in favor.
Okay, motion, please.
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to approve the application as submitted with the condition that all construction activity and vehicles be contained on site and that there be no construction prior to Labor Day of 2021.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck?
I vote yes.
Paul?
Semple votes yes.
Dave Thompson?
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Dave Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. That's a unanimous vote. Thank you, Mr. Riley.
Mr. Chairman, I have another request
Sure.
regarding the scheduling today.
Yes?
I've managed to speak to representatives of all the applicants except the sign applicant, and they've all agreed that, subject to your approval, if the Molly Logan application, which is last on the current agenda, would to be heard at this time.
Okay, fine. We agree to that. So I'll have Sarah read that. That's Sarah. That's 21-059, please.
Application number 21-059, Molly Logan, care of William F. Riley Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 915 Old Queen Anne Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 7H, Block 51, Lot T4. The applicant seeks to construct at-grade steps, a storage box, and boat rack as allowed by special permit under Section 4A3A of the Protective Bylaw. The lot contains 85,000 square feet in the R60 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 9, and Section 8D2B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Thank you. So if you've been out to the site, which I assume you all have been, the last 15 feet or so of the property is a very steep grade down to the beach. And so the applicant would like to construct at-grade steps with a handrail, and also have a boat rack, an 8x6 boat rack, and then a 3x5 storage box just above the top of the bank. This has already been to the Conservation Commission, which has approved it, and I believe it's it's basically for safety and convenience, so that all members of the family, both young and old, to negotiate the last 15 to 20 feet down to the beach. That'd be our presentation. I'm happy to run through the criteria.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary to do criteria unless a member has a specific question on it. So we'll have, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate so Sarah can introduce you into the meeting.
I see no one that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
Okay, the correspondence. This is from Nicole Smith, the conservation agent for the town. It's written on July 20th. Conservation approved this project and an order of conditions was issued on March 19th, 2021. The plan submitted to the ZBA matched the approved conservation plans. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak against this application or has a specific question? If so, please indicate now so that Sarah can recognize you.
I see no one that wishes to speak. Oh, hang on. We have a hand raised. Whitney?
Thanks. Sorry, I was late to find the hand raised there. I just had a quick question.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Whitney Tropiano. I came late into the meeting, so just let me know if I need to advise on anything else.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Based on the plan, it looks like people will still be able to walk in front of the stairs and nothing's going to lead all the way down to the water. I just want to confirm that is expected.
Mr. Riley?
That's correct. The approval from the Conservation Commission only gets us to the bottom of the bank.
Cool.
It would not extend past the bottom of the bank.
Great.
Does that answer your question, Whitney?
It does. Thank you so much.
Okay. Is there anyone else out there who would like to ask a question or speak against this?
I see no one else that wishes to speak in opposition or has a specific question.
Okay, questions from the board. We'll start with Megan.
I have no questions.
Dave Thompson.
No questions.
Dave Each.
Dave Veach has no questions.
Randy.
No questions from Randy.
Buck.
Buck has no questions.
Paul.
Paul has no questions.
And I don't. Okay. Motion, please.
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Need a vote on that. Buck.
Buck votes yes.
Paul.
Sample votes yes.
Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Dave Veach,
Beach votes yes.
and I vote yes. Deliberations, let's start with Paul.
It seems to me this satisfies our criteria. I don't see any adverse effect on the neighborhood, so I would move to approve the application as submitted.
Is there any kind of a condition that's necessary?
I don't know that we need any in this area, but Bill, do you feel any need for conditions?
Well, no, unfortunately, the application went in late because of yours truly. And so the family would really like to get some use out of these stairs this summer. So would really appreciate if there were no conditions. I mean, obviously this work's all going to be done by hand. So that there should be no difficulty here in terms of the usual problems we have, with loud tools and things of that nature.
It certainly seems to me that the area can contain any construction that's going to be taking place on it, given the size of the property. So I don't see a need for conditions.
Okay. Back to deliberations, Dave Thompson.
I'm just in full favor of it. Good idea.
Dave Veach,
Yes, it meets all the criteria and is not a detriment, so I'll support it, yeah.
Randy,
Meets the criteria. I wouldn't have any problem with it.
Buck,
Meets the criteria, and I support it.
Megan.
I would definitely support it as well.
Paul, a motion, please.
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to approve the application as submitted.
Dave Beach seconds.
Buck. Voting.
Buck votes yes.
Paul.
Semple votes yes.
Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Dave Veach.
Dave Beach votes yes.
And I vote yes. That's a unanimous decision. Thank you, Mr. Riley.
And thank you to the board for taking me out of order, and thank you to all my colleagues who agreed to allow me to come out of order. Thank you very much.
Okay, Sarah, application 21-040.
Application number 21-040, Jonathan and Alicia Downs, care of Stephanie Sequin, P.O. Box 439, South Orleans, Mass. 02662. Owners of property located at 41 Locust Lane, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 15F, Block 45, Lot 53. The applicant was denied a dimensional variance on June 10th, 2021 for the proposed elevated catwalk. The applicant has requested that the board reconsider the vote, allowing the applicant to withdraw without prejudice. A dimensional variance is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 10, and Section 8D2C of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Okay, so who do we have? Stephanie, are you back with us?
Mr. Chairman, Bill Litchfield, here on behalf of Jonathan and Alicia Downs. If I could speak, and Stephanie is Sequin has clearly authorized me to speak. The board, and I'll be brief about this, the board will recall that 6 weeks ago there were two petitions filed by Ryder Wilcox on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Downs, 21040 and 21041. The board ordinarily, as a much appreciated courtesy, allows an applicant the opportunity to withdraw. In this particular case, Ms. Sequin did not request that opportunity, and the board voted, as is its right, to reject the variance request, and then allowed the next petition, 41041 rather, to be withdrawn. We're simply asking that the board consider reconsidering its vote to deny the variance and instead allow me on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Downs to request a withdrawal, which precludes the need for a repetitive petition in the event that the Downses come back.
Okay, well, this is highly unusual, isn't it, Mr. Litchfield, for us to even consider changing a vote. But, so I think I'm going to go right to questions from the board members they might or might not have. Buck.
I think it's a reasonable request, and I have no questions.
Megan.
Sorry, can you explain to me, because haven't been here all that long, what the benefit is of doing this? And I guess this would be a question for you, Mr. Litchfield.
Well, I can answer it for him.
Okay,
It allows them to come back for a variance request that's essentially the same within 2 years. If not, it would have to go through a process. I think it goes to the planning board first and then to us. And there has to be something different about it
okay.
to give them the green light to do it.
Okay, so that being understood, I think it is a reasonable request, and I would support it as well.
Paul?
Yes, I think it's correct that we normally would, if requested, allow a withdrawal in this kind of a situation, so I have no objection to granting this request.
I have no objections to granting Bill this request.
Nor do I, Dave.
Randy?
Because she didn't have counsel, then I think it's reasonable.
Well, she is a professional. And I think, we don't want to lose sight of that, just because she's not an attorney, but she's used to this sort of thing. Yeah, I personally have a problem with it, but that's me. It's not that she didn't have an opportunity, because I think we pushed her to accept on the special permit the idea of withdrawing. She wasn't going to do it, but I think that we collectively pushed her for it, and that maybe it should have been done at that time. But it's a very minor point, and I should say this to Stephanie: you have a very, very good friend in Mrs. Clark. So, a very good friend. So I will vote for it, even though it's against my best nature. So, Paul, let's have a motion, please.
All right, this is Paul Semple. I'll move to grant the request that we reconsider the vote, allowing the applicant to withdraw without prejudice, and that we do reconsider our vote and allow a withdrawal without prejudice.
Dave Veach seconds.
Sarah, does this mean that we vote on this and then we accept a motion from the applicant to withdraw?
That would be correct.
Okay. So what we're doing here is allowing okay. All right, so we'll vote on that. Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Paul?
Semple votes yes.
Dave?
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Veach votes yes.
And I'll vote yes. Okay, now a motion to allow, well, I should say, Mr. Litchfield, I think the motion would properly come from you or from Stephanie to have us.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the applicant, we would request the board's leave to withdraw this petition without prejudice.
Okay. Any discussion? Fine, we need to vote on that. Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Paul?
Semple votes yes.
Dave?
Dave Thompson, yes.
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. And that's it. That was a unanimous vote. Okay, Sarah, application 21-030.
Application number 21-030, Devin and Kathy Cooper, owner of properties located at 430 Riverview Drive, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 7J, Block 29, Lot C 112. The applicant seeks dimensional variance under Section 8D2C from the requirements of Appendix 2 to allow for the construction of an addition within the northerly abutter setback and allow for the building coverage in excess of the maximum allowed. The proposed addition will be located 18.4 feet from the northerly abutter, where a 25-foot setback is required. The proposed building coverage is 3,028 square feet, where 2,950 square feet is the maximum allowed. A dimensional variance is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 10, and Section 8D2C of the Chatham Protective Bylaw. This was continued for May 13th, 2021.
On June 29th, Sarah received the following email from Kathy Cooper. Hi, Sarah. Per our discussion this morning, Devin and I wish to withdraw our application for the zoning variance at this point in time without prejudice. Cordially, Kathy Cooper. Motion, please.
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to approve the application as submitted.
Dave Veach seconds.
Well, I don't think we're approving any application.
They're
We're approving the withdrawal.
Withdrawal.
They're requesting to withdraw their variance
I
application.
thought they were applying to withdraw. But in any case,
No, there's
I'm
no
moving.
application for that.
That's the kind of errant pedantry up with which I will not put. I move to grant the request.
Dave Veach seconds.
That's good, because if we'd done the first one, Paul, we would have approved the variance. Buck,
Buck votes yes.
Paul,
Semple votes yes.
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Veach votes yes.
and I vote yes. That's a unanimous vote. You almost tripped me up there, Paul. That was very good. That was very good. Okay, Sarah, we got 21-050, please.
Application number 21-050, David and Leah Hoovey, care of William G. Litchfield Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owners of property located at 47 Eldridge Square, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 14F, Block 39, Lot 41. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the demolition of the existing garage and the construction of a new garage and additions. Also proposed is the installation of an additional exterior mechanical system appliance, AC condenser, 13.6 feet from the northerly abutter. The existing dwelling, garage, is non-conforming, and it is located 14.8 feet from the southerly abutter. The proposed garage will be non-conforming, and that it will be located 14.6 feet from the southerly abutter, and the proposed exterior mechanical system appliance will be non-conforming, and that it will be located 13.6 feet from the northerly abutter, where a 15-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 1,545 square feet, 11.8%, and the proposed building coverage is 1,930 square feet, 14.8%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming, and that it contains 13,053 square feet, where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Mr. Litchfield, before you begin, there's a matter of disclosure here from myself. David Hovey is the president of the Chatham Beach and Tennis Club. I'm a member of the Chatham Beach and Tennis Club. If you feel in any way that membership would impede my ability to be fair and adhere to our criteria, please so speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under the assumption that there's been no dramatic rise in dues, we have no objection.
And actually, Mr. Hovey did a heck of a job last year being the president with the pandemic. Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill Litchfield here on behalf of Dave and Lee Hovey. And recognizing that you have 2 hearings worth of hearings this afternoon, I will try to be relatively brief. With me today is Chris Cannon of Architects 33, and I think Mr. and Mrs. Hovey are on the meeting as well. As you know from having been out there, 47 Eldridge Square is an early 60s 1-bedroom story, 3-bedroom house rather. The Hoveys purchased it a few years ago with an eye toward renovating it, making it an eventual retirement home, and they are now moving in that direction. As shown on the site plan there, they propose to square off the front of the house. It now has a gable end sticking out toward Eldridge Square. They propose to put on a 292 square foot addition in the lower right-hand corner of what Sarah has put up in front of you, and to slightly enlarge the garage, moving it further toward the rear. They don't have the room without creating a new nonconformity to get a 2-car garage, but they would like to have a somewhat larger one. So they are looking for, in addition to that, also the installation of another exterior mechanical appliance system, also known as air conditioning condenser, right next to one that now exists on the north side. So it is a fairly straightforward proposal. It includes, obviously, the construction of a 2nd story and renovation of the downstairs. So I'll go into the criteria as to adequacy of site. There, Chris's handiwork is shown there as well. That's what is proposed at the top is existing, and what is proposed is at the bottom. Notwithstanding the lot size and the slight sideline encroachments on both sides, I think the site certainly is adequate for the circa 1960 house built in an old R10 subdivision, and I think you can also find that the site is adequate for a second story and the small addition at the front, as well as moving the garage a little bit further to the rear, which would provide for eventual year-round retirement use, and the additional less than 300 square foot on the front and the added second story will accommodate them in that regard. As to compatibility of size, every lot in the neighborhood is non-conforming. The existing house has a living area of only about 1,100 square feet, but happens to be on one of the largest lots. For the first time in a year and a half, I was able to hand out the handouts that you usually have been looking at as PDFs. And on the third sheet of that handout is a comparison. It will remain comparable. Unlike some other houses in the neighborhood that have excess coverage of up to almost 21%, we will still comply. The gross floor area and the living area are not inconsistent with the neighboring properties. It will, if you approve the special permit, remain a reasonable and compatible home. As to the extent of increase in nonconformities, as Sarah read, there are two. We have in a nonconforming lot, we have sideline deficiencies. The change, because of the lot line, the angle of the lot line is literally 2 inches. Because the garage is not squarely sited perpendicular to the street, there's a very, very modest increase in nonconformity, about 2 inches in the rebuilt garage. The air conditioning condenser, again, on the north side already exists, so there's no change there. As to suitability of site, the site has been suitable for residential use since it was developed 60-odd years ago. There are no environmental issues. As to scale siting, views, mass, and views and vistas, what you see on the screen there, I think, sort of illustrates what's involved. The mid-century ranch is not really of any special notable charm. I think Chris has done a very good job in designing a simple traditional cape with a shed dormer. It eliminates that gable sticking out toward the street. It will remain reasonable and appropriate for the site. I think many people would say not only is it not detrimental, but it's actually an improvement, and there is no impact on neighborhood views and vistas. As to compatibility of use, there's no change. It will remain purely residential. The chair will later read, in regard to adequacy of water and sewer, a comment from the health agent that the septic tank may need to be relocated. And in fact, if you look on the site plan, there is a note to that effect. It is required that it be 10 feet from the garage. And as David Clark has noted on the site plan, the contractor will recover the septic tank, determine prior to moving it whether in fact it has to be moved, and if it has to be moved a few feet to the left or west to maintain that 10-foot dimension, that will occur. But there's no change in the number of bedrooms, and that was, as the chair will read, that was Judy Giorgio's only concern. No impact on traffic flow and safety, noise, and litter, or anything else. So the issue is whether the construction of a slightly larger garage, squaring off of the front of the house and thus adding 292 square feet to the first floor, and then putting on a second story, otherwise on the existing footprint, whether doing those things is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. The house will remain compatible with its surroundings. The gross floor area and living area are in keeping with the abutting properties, particularly 55 Eldred Square right next door. Those houses, at least, that are 1 3/4 stories, as this will be. It will remain a reasonable home in either comparative or absolute terms. And again, it's on one of the largest lots in the neighborhood. Similarly, coverage remains compliant, unlike many others in the neighborhood, which range up to 16.5%, 18.2%, 20.8%, as shown on the chart. The condenser, a small aspect of the appeal, is proposed to be located next to one which already exists, so there is no resulting increase in nonconformity. In light of the criteria in the plans, and parenthetically, the chair will also read letters of support from 3 or 4 abutters. There's also one that raises some questions, and if the chair would like, or the board would like, I'll be happy to respond to those. But I think that based on the criteria and the plans, you can find that the proposed renovated home enlarged but still compliant as to footprint and thus coverage, is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. And we thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this project? If so, please indicate on the screen now so that Sarah can recognize you.
I do not see anyone that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
I'll read the correspondence. First of all, we have a memo. This is from Judith Giorgio, Chatham's health agent. She writes on 7/7, I have reviewed the plan to renovate. The renovations and additions do not add septic flow at the property. The proposed garage will encroach on the existing septic tank. A permit to relocate the tank must be obtained from the health department. And then we have a letter. This is from Rich and Donna Alexander. They are at 15 Eldridge Square South. They write on July 21st. In the past, we have written in support of our neighbors' requests for variances. In the case of application 21-050, we ask you to reject the request for a variance. The Havey's backyard is at least 50 feet deep and can accommodate both the placement of the AC condenser and the addition without coming closer to the property lines and impacting their neighbors. This lot and setbacks are already non-conforming. This action would make them more out of compliance. Further, the Eldridge Square Road is very tight, and we continually see overflow cars parked on their lawns, making it hard for ambulances, fire trucks to navigate. Several weeks ago, 5 cars were at the home, 2 of which were straddling the road lawn. This house has in the past hosted loud and crowded events which exceed the 10 p.m. noise ordinance. There have been several occasions where we have called the police, including once for expletives being yelled at 2 a.m. Extra living space close to the property line will increase the noise level for all of their neighbors. Since they can add both the AC condenser and the addition within the current non-conforming setback restrictions by using part of the backyard, we see this as further disregard for their neighbors. Lastly, who will be providing the extra water used by a larger space with more inhabitants? The town should be halting all expansion permits until the water problem is solved. The mandatory water conservation program is not enforced, and we see many sprinklers going when they should not be. Then we have a note. This is July 13th. It's from Mary and Peter Schock, 17 Surrey Lane. My wife and I have lived in Chatham on Surrey Lane for 25 years. This is a very special neighborhood. We have reviewed the plans for 47 Eldridge Square. The renovations are tasteful and keep the wonderful feel of our neighborhood. The Hoveys are a lovely family and will be a great year-round addition to the town. We're in full support of their project. Please approve. Then we have an email. This is from Bernie and Mary O'Connor, 53 Tipcart/127 Hitching Post. They write on June 22nd, regarding the request for the variance on the above subject property, we are in full support of the request for a variance. You know, that word has been used twice in these letters. It's not a variance, it's a special permit. It's a very different thing. Then we have a letter from Mary and Jim Sullivan, 16 Surrey Lane. They write on July 20th. We're writing in support of the petition of our neighbors Dave and Lee Hovey for a special permit to allow for a modest expansion of their home on 47. As nearby year-round neighbors, we are in favor of their proposal, which would fit into our neighborhood. We are very pleased to see the return of the neighborhood to year-round residences and fully support their plans. We urge the board to vote in support of this request. That's the extent of the correspondence. So, Mr. Litchfield, before you answer Mr. and Mrs. Alexander, I will ask if there's anyone in the audience who has a specific question or wishes to speak against this proposal. If so, please indicate it on the screen now so Sarah can recognize you.
I see no one that wishes to speak in opposition or has a specific question.
Mr. Litchfield, would you like to answer the questions raised in the Alexander letter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would, and I appreciate the time. I will be brief. If Sarah would be kind enough to bring up the site plan, that would perhaps help a little bit. But in regard to the, thank you. And if you kind of go out rather than focusing in, I took a look at, sort of enlarging it, or maybe as much as it can, but I took a look when I became aware of this letter to try to find out how close the authors lived, and in fact, it's not on that site plan. It's not an immediate abutter. It's a couple of lots down to the south. If a neighbor to the north at 55 had raised an issue about the AC unit, or if the neighbor to the south at 37 had raised an issue about the garage, I would perhaps be more understanding. But this was from someone who apparently has an issue. I spoke to the Hubbies. They had no knowledge of any police calls to the property. They acknowledged that before their retirement, the property had been rented. They regret if there were problems. They have no intention to rent it in the future. And finally, as to water use, there are no additional bedrooms, so there is no additional water use. So I simply wanted to make those points, and I thank you for allowing me to do so.
Okay, so let's go to questions from the board. We'll start with Dave Thompson.
Thank you. I know about this neighborhood, Bill. I have no questions of you.
Dave Veach.
Dave Veach has no questions.
Randy.
Randy has no questions.
Buck.
Buck has no questions.
Megan.
Megan has no questions.
And
Paul.
Paul has no questions.
And I have none. Okay, Paul, a motion, please.
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
We need to vote on that. Buck.
Buck supports the motion.
Paul.
Semple votes yes.
Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, deliberations. Let's start with Dave. Dave Veach.
This is an absolute improvement to the neighborhood. I think it certainly meets all of our criteria, and is certainly not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, and I will happily support it.
Randy.
It looks like a great project, and I would support it if I were voting.
Buck.
Well, looking at criteria number 3 on the setbacks, I think the representative did a fine job explaining it, and agreeing with that, I will support it.
Megan.
I would agree with Buck, and I think that this is, personally, I like the other house, the house that's there as well, so I don't know that I would say it's a significant improvement, but it's certainly not detrimental, so, and I think they've done a nice job.
Paul.
I met Mr. Hovey when I was there viewing the property, and they do intend to occupy it on a full-time basis, so I don't think renters will be necessarily a problem as they were in the past. And the change in the setback for the garage is such a small amount that it really is sort of de minimis to the existing situation. The real issue is it's a much bigger house than it was before. I agree with Megan that there's nothing wrong with the house that exists there, except Mr. Hovey said if I put my hand up, I hit the ceiling. So it's a little difficult to make it, a year-round home for the whole group. So I will be supporting the application.
Dave Thompson.
I'm going to support it also. It's a nice neighborhood, and this is going to fit in beautifully. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's frankly great improvement from what it is. And as someone pointed out in the correspondence, it's nice to see some, year-round residents from, right. Okay. Paul, what about conditions on something like this?
Well, it is a tight neighborhood. Certainly, if there were going to be construction vehicles and so forth on the street, it would be a problem depending upon the time of year and how things are being done. So I guess I'll ask Bill, what's the plan in terms of construction and how would it be handled?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know that the Hubbies have construction drawings yet. Mr. Cannon or the Hubbies might be able to respond as to timing. But we would certainly accept and understand a provision that there be no parking on Eldridge Square. So I can't tell you that a seasonal limitation would or wouldn't be a problem. Mr. Cannon or the Hubbies might be able to respond. Given the timing, even if it were to start soon, it couldn't start until after Labor Day, given the appeals period and everything else. So I think for this calendar year, there's not going to be any issues.
Well, I might ask Chris Cannon what kind of a time frame he envisions it's going to take to build this. Of course, it depends on the builder, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think Chris Cannon here. I think I've been in discussion with the Hubbies about this, and at the moment we're all a little bit in flux for a lot of reasons. One, of course, being the the extreme costs of building. Secondly, can you even get a builder? So I think at this point we don't have a builder. There are discussions happening. We don't have construction documents yet. Certainly I wouldn't have them at least for another 3 to 4 weeks, just given the appeals period. You'd be looking into September anyway before we could get a building permit. So if we could get it done, we would start in September and be done by presumably middle of June. So I don't see that there are any issues there. If for some reason it got delayed, you certainly have the right as a board to ask not to have any work done outside during the course of the summer. But I would imagine if by the time we got to next summer, if it wasn't completed, we would certainly have the people inside doing the work. So, and you can certainly, tell them they can't have landscapers and whatnot doing work outside as well. So I don't see that would be a problem. But at this point, we don't absolutely know what the date of construction would be for a beginning.
Well, I think, Chris, you hit upon the major problem for me, which is they don't have a builder yet. And as I understand it from the builders I've talked to, they're backed up, some of them a couple of years. So leaving it open-ended like that doesn't make me feel good unless we decide we just take summers, multiple.
I,
What do you think?
from what I hear, I would be inclined to use our standard restrictions that all construction activity and vehicles be contained on site. Between June 30th and Labor Day, no exterior construction would be allowed, no work would be permitted on weekends, and construction activity would be between 8 and 5 p.m. only.
Okay, and the first condition is open-ended. It's not a specific year. You're just saying, no matter what, whenever it might happen.
That's correct. None of these are attached to a specific year.
Okay, so that makes sense to me. And Mr. Litchfield?
Yeah, no, I agree, Mr. Chairman. I think Mr. Semple pointed out a perfectly normal and customary condition. We have no objection to that.
Okay, but because it could apply to this year, next year, and the year after. All right.
Exactly.
Okay. So I think we need a motion, Paul?
All right, this is Paul Semple. I'll move to approve the application as submitted with the conditions I just outlined.
Dave Veach seconds.
Okay, we need a vote on that. Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Paul?
Semple votes yes.
Dave Thompson?
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. That's a unanimous vote. Thank you, Mr. Litchfield, Hovey's, and Mr. Cannon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, 21-051.
Application number 21-051, Michael and Janet Dyer, care of Theodore Streiber, 15 Linden Tree Lane, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owners of property located at 103 Stony Hill Road, also shown in the town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 14H, Block 9, Lot 7. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling on a conforming lot via the construction of additions. The existing dwelling is non-conforming in that it is located 22.7 feet from the road. The proposed addition will be non-conforming in that it will be located 24.2 feet from the road where a 50-foot setback is required. The existing lot coverage is 2,300 square feet, 18.1%, and the proposed lot coverage is 2,650 square feet, 20.9%, where 60% is the maximum allowed. The lot contains 12,683 square feet, where 10,000 square feet is required in the GB3 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Sam, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
Thanks,
the floor is
Driver.
yours. Floor is yours.
Architect with the Dwyers. I think Mike Dwyer is here. And if I say something that omits.
Excuse me,
fact,
Sam, for a second. We're having trouble hearing you. Can you guys turn up Sam's mic anyway?
How's that?
Let's try it. Let's try
Okay.
it. Okay. Sam, go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay, the house itself has 3 bedrooms, living room, and a small kitchen with only a cramped space for in-room dining. The proposed dormers on the second floor are designed to make a proper master bathroom with a code-compliant stair. The 4th bedroom over the garage will have to be applied for to the health department since the sewers have just recently been installed in the street. The new breezeway allows for a powder room and closet for the house, as well as a much-needed dining room in the back that faces the deck and the backyard. It is in a GB3 district with a 50-foot road setback and is 22.7 from the road itself now. The house strides a 6-foot downslope and is confined, and any additions are confined to that slope and would be run along facing the road, as we have done with the garage and the breezeway. All other dimensional controls are in compliance. Coverage in the advertisement is for conservation purposes. Building coverage is 5.5% existing, and we are moving it up to 11.2%. GB3 has no building coverage requirement, but the 11.2% is well below what is required in other residential districts. The additions solve what is basically lacking in the existing house, whose area is 1,023 square feet, and now will be enlarged to 1,820 square feet. If you'd like, I could read the criteria. For adequacy of the size of the site, the Dwyers have owned the house for 11 years with the intention of using it long term. Previous owner used it as a rental, and the Dwyers have made small improvements toward their long-term use. It's a one-story small house on a rather large lot of over 13,000 square feet. However, the usability of the lot is limited to the area level with the street and contiguous with the street, with the house occupying the slope to a walkout basement and lawn and a wooded backyard. The yard is somewhat impacted by the visible activity and sounds coming from the large excavating septic system and asphalt paving contractor materials yard surrounding them to the rear of their property. The frontage complies with the bylaw and provides a convenient space for the garage addition as proposed. Compatibility of the site with the neighboring properties. The Dyer's property is 12,683 square feet with a house built in 1914 and is listed in the assessor's card at 945 square feet. The Eldridge property, which is on the east side at 103 Stony Hill Road, is 9,315 square feet with the house built in 1918 at 1,675 square feet. Adjacent property to the west of 103 is 12,614 square feet with a house built in 1953 at 1,156 square feet. The other houses in the areas are all very much the same. Proposed house will be slightly larger with an existing area of 1,023 and the proposed at 1,870. This includes the new second floor, breezeway, and the bedroom over the garage. The height, however, only increases 3.5 feet from the existing. The extent of the increase is in non-conforming nature. The Dwyer's existing house is non-conforming in only one way, the front setback at 22.7 from Stony Hill Road layout line, where 50 feet is required by the GB3 zoning district. I suppose this is, well, that's fine. Suitability of the site, including impact on the properties. The Dwyer's property is very much like the neighbors, with uses appropriate to small residences on landscape properties. Additional size of the house provides additional and varied streetscape to the neighborhood. Impact on visual character, views and vista. The proposed house roof line will not obstruct any views from any neighbor. The compatibility with the neighboring uses. Proposed structure purely residential in nature and fully compatible with all residential neighbors. The adequacy of the sewage disposal, source of water, and drainage. Existing house is on a site septic system which is sized for no increased flow from the existing 3-bedroom. The 4th bedroom will be applied for to the Board of Health since the inclusion of the sewer in Stony Hill Road. And the impact on traffic flow and safety. The proposed project has no effect on traffic flow and safety. Construction vehicles should be able to and will be able to park along the road frontage. Noise and litter. Construction is confined to a small area on the site and should be completed over a small amount of time after the summer. Adequacy of utilities and public services. The house is completely served by water, gas, and electric service. Visual impact on the neighborhood. The new house does not differ much in style of the neighborhood. Same trim set, same white cedar shingles, same windows and types. The height of the house does increase, but only at a small amount. The dwellings in the floodplain. The house is not located in the floodplain, so in no way interferes with the natural flow of drainage in the area. The driveway will remain permeable. The new dormered house and added breezeway and garage will be such that the finding by this board of substantially not more detrimental to the neighborhood can be reached and a special permit be granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate now so that Sarah can pick you up on the screen.
I see no one that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
Correspondence, we have a memo from Judith Giorgio. On 7/7, she writes, I've reviewed the plan to add an addition. The proposal appears to add a 4th bedroom to the existing dwelling. The dwelling is adjacent to the sewer line under construction on the road. Approval for a 4th bedroom will be required as part of the sewer connection. Application for the sewer connection will be required as part of the approval process for the construction as proposed. Then we have a certificate of appropriateness. This is from the HBDC, that's the Historic Business District Commission. And they, on May 5th, found the commission voted 5 in favor, 0 opposing, 0 abstaining. They approved this project with conditions, and the conditions specific. The roof shingles will be a 3-tab architectural shingle in the color of charcoal. They also say any changes or alterations to the approved certificate require approval in the future. Then we have an email. This is from Michelle Hannon. She writes on June 17th. She writes, 103 Stony Hill Road has an outstanding water bill account of $39.08 that was due on 5/12/2021. Sam, I hope you get your clients to pay the $39.08. And I believe that is it. That's it. So, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak against this application or has a specific question? If so, please indicate on the screen now so that Sarah can recognize you.
I see no one that wishes to speak in opposition or has a specific question.
Okay, questions from the board. Let's start with Randy.
I don't have any questions.
Buck.
Buck has no questions.
Megan.
Megan has no questions.
Paul.
Paul has no questions.
Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson doesn't have any questions either.
Dave Veach.
Dave Veach has no questions.
And I have none. Motion, please, Paul.
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Need a roll call vote. Buck.
Votes yes.
Paul.
Semple votes yes.
Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. Deliberations, let's start with Buck.
Well, I certainly can't find that it would be more detrimental to the neighborhood, so I'm going to support it.
Megan.
I would have to agree.
Paul.
Yes, I agree. It meets all of our criteria.
Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson votes yes. And take a look at the chimney. It's round. Just thought you might find that interesting.
Well, Dave.
Isn't that one of our criteria? The
Round chimney?
configuration of the chimney? I agree with all previous. I will support it. Thanks.
And Randy.
And I also agree with the rest of the board, and I would support it if I were voting.
Okay. I think we need a motion. Do we need any conditions?
Well, I'm just trying to think if there's enough room on the property to deal with construction vehicles and so forth. Ted, when do you plan to do some construction here?
Well, we're again facing a time that we certainly couldn't start until the fall. If we could, I have a couple of contractors who could, but we have to do the process of bidding and securing. So if it gets delayed, but I think that the 22 feet is sufficient to take for the construction vehicles.
Well, it looks to me as if perhaps what would be appropriate would be our standard conditions. So I would move to approve the application as submitted with the condition that all construction activity and vehicles be contained on site, that between June 30th and Labor Day, no exterior construction would be allowed, that no work would be permitted on weekends, and the construction activity would be between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only.
Dave Veach
That would be
seconds.
appropriate.
Okay, we need a vote on that. Buck.
Buck votes yes.
Paul.
Sample votes yes.
Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Dave Veach.
Veach votes yes.
I vote yes. So that's a unanimous vote. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you so much.
Okay, before I have Sarah read 21-052, I want to tell Mark and Dallas that we will take a break at the end of this application, like a 5-minute break. So, Sarah, 21-052, please.
Application number 21-052. Donald and Lillian Chalker, care of William G. Litchfield, Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owners of property located at 30 Kent Place, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 15D, Block 93, Lot 70. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the demolition of existing decks and the construction of a new porch and deck. The existing dwelling is non-conforming in that it is located 9.6 feet from the easterly abutter and 7.2 feet from the westerly abutter. The proposed porch will be non-conforming in that it will be located 11.4 feet from the easterly abutter, and the proposed deck will be non-conforming in that it will be located 7.2 feet from the westerly abutter, where a 15-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 1,767 square feet, 19.8%, and the proposed building coverage is 1,948 square feet, 21.8%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 8,942 square feet, where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Mr. Litchfield.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Bill Litchfield on behalf of Don and Jamie Chalker. Mrs. Chalker is here with us this afternoon, or someplace with us this afternoon. She's actually on Kent Place. What we are seeking to do is two things. The one that is completely invisible is to enlarge a deck on the rear of the property. As you know from your site visit, there's a deck that comes off the back door. The Chalkers would like to square that off and reconstruct it. More importantly and more visibly and more historically accurate, Sarah just brought up the site plan, and you can see the deck on the rear. There's a deck there. They want to enlarge it a little bit. And because of the narrowness of the lot, and this is, of course, a small lot downtown in the right off of our commercial zone, and an older lot, it is small and non-conforming. So by squaring off the deck and enlarging it by a few feet, they will be at the same setback from the lot line that they presently are. More important to what we're seeking is to restore something that was once part of the house, which is going to be shown there, which is to restore a porch which once had been on the front of the house. And if Sarah will go one more page, I think she will show, or be able to show there, a photograph, imperfect, but a photograph that shows the front porch we're trying to restore. The original that I have here is sepia toned. I would venture that it is certainly older than a photograph of a beardless Mr. Upson on his bicycle trip cross country, and probably older than any of Mr. Nixon's cars. But there was, in fact, a porch on this house, and the Chalkers, who have owned the house for more than 40 years, would like to restore it. So I'll go into the criteria. The site is clearly adequate for the existing house, has been for more than 100 years, notwithstanding lot size and coverage issues, and it would remain adequate for a return of the original porch as shown there, as well as for squaring off the deck at the rear. That porch, as shown there, is more historically faithful to an earlier incarnation of the house as to compatibility of size. On the handout that you have on the third page, you'll see that coverage ranges up to 43% in some of the neighborhood lots, even the residential lots, not talking about the commercial lot. We are going to increase slightly from 19.8 to 21.8%, but certainly we will remain consistent and compatible. The 185 square feet of additional coverage is fairly small, and the deck, of course, isn't a coverage issue. As to the extent of increase in nonconformity is minimal. It is coverage only rather than gross floor area or living area, because the porch is neither, nor is the deck. And it's encroaching, the porch is encroaching less into the sidelines than does the existing house or the deck. As to suitability of site, it's a long developed neighborhood at the edge of the downtown business district. It's certainly suitable for restoring the porch. In the small enlargement of the rear deck, there's no impact on natural environment. Scale sighting views, mass and vistas. The Chalkers have maintained this house elegantly for the last 40 years. They've taken good care of it. It is appropriate to the scale and mass of the neighborhood. It actually pre-exists the scale and mass of most of the neighborhood. No effect on views. And again, the porch is historically appropriate because it was there, and it was approved earlier this week unanimously by the Historical Commission. The other concerns or criteria are not at issue. It is a simple request. Yes, there is additional coverage involved, but we think that you can find that putting the porch on as it once was and rebuilding the deck is not at all substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, and in fact is appropriate without negative consequences for the bylaw, the town, or the neighborhood. Certainly be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Litchfield. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate on the screen so that Sarah can recognize you.
I see no one that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
Then I will read the correspondence. First of all, we have a memo from Judith Giorgio, health agent. She writes on 7/7, I have no concerns regarding the construction of a new porch and deck. The property is served by municipal sewer, so there are no setback concerns. Then there's an email. This is from Michelle Clark to Sarah Clark. She writes on July 20th. At a public hearing held today, Historical Commission members considered an application for a partial demolition of the structure at 30 Kent Place to accommodate a new porch. Commission members determined that the structure is over 75 years old and found it to be historically significant, but did not impose a demolition delay. Please let me know if you need any additional info. And then we have an email. This is from Margaret and Steve Heck. Their address is 15 Shattuck Place. They write on July 2nd, concerning this application, please be advised that we are very much in favor of the proposed addition to the Chalkers home at 30 Kent Place. That's the end of the correspondence. Is there anyone in the audience who has a question or is concerned? Please indicate it on the screen now that you would like to speak so that Sarah can recognize you.
I see no one with a specific question or that wishes to speak in opposition.
Okay, then we'll have questions from the board. Paul,
I have no questions.
Dave Thompson,
Dave Thompson has no questions either.
Dave Each,
Dave Each has no questions.
Randy,
Randy has no questions.
Buck,
Buck has no questions.
Megan,
Megan has no questions.
and I have no questions. Paul, a motion?
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
We need a vote on that. Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Paul?
Semple votes yes.
Dave T?
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Dave E?
Dave Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. Deliberations. Dave Thompson?
I think it's a very good idea. It's a beautiful old home, and I would be very much in favor of it.
Dave Each?
It meets all of the applicable criteria and is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. It would be a substantial improvement to see that porch restored, especially. And I'll enthusiastically support it.
Randy?
I also support it, and I think it's a great way to take care of your home, to not just patch up the boards, but to do a nice project like this. And I'd support it by voting.
Buck?
And I support it.
Megan?
It's certainly not more detrimental. I love the project. I love that they're being historically accurate.
Paul Semple, I agree with those comments.
Any conditions?
I don't know that there's that much work that needs to be done. Obviously, it's a very congested area, but Bill, do you see any need for conditions here?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman, if I could respond to Mr. Semple, given the almost, the steep slope, the work would be done completely on site. It's behind a hedge anyway. I suspect that this is a several months long project rather than anything that would go over into the summer, and certainly a condition for no summer work would be acceptable. I don't think the Chalkers would want anybody banging around the front yard during the summer anyway.
All right, I will move to approve the application as submitted with the provision that there be no construction between June 30th and Labor Day. No exterior construction would be allowed. No work would be permitted on weekends, and construction activity between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only. Are you saying, Bill, that all construction activity and vehicles could be maintained on site?
On site or in the municipal parking lot as need be, but only for, loading and offloading. But we would obviously have to keep Kent Place open.
At least he's honest.
So what you're saying is that they may use the municipal parking lot as a state, as a way to park vehicles, but that would not be during high tourist season?
It would not be because of the construction limitation we would have anyway.
All right, I'll move to approve the application then with the conditions I've outlined and add that all construction activity and vehicles would be contained on site or if located off-site and in public areas, that be beyond October 15th? Seems it's Columbus Day, yeah, Columbus Day, and between Columbus Day and June 30th.
Dave Veach seconds.
Need to vote on that, Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Paul?
Sample vote yes.
Dave Thompson?
Dave Thompson, yes.
Page?
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes, that's a unanimous vote. Thank you, Mr. Litchfield. As
Thank
I
you,
mentioned, before we go on to our next application, we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Application number 21-057. David Grant Kaiser and John David Furnish, care of William G. Litchfield Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owners of property located at 48 Library Lane, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 15D, Block 23, Lot B9. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the partial demolition of the existing dwelling and the construction of additions. Also proposed is the construction of a new garage/carriage house. The existing dwelling is non-conforming in that it is located 21.8 feet from the road, where a 25-foot setback is required. The proposed additions and the garage/carriage house will comply with all bulk and dimensional requirements, but are considered a substantial alteration, and under the second except clause of Section 6 of Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, such substantial alteration requires the grant of a special permit. The existing building coverage is 1,800 square feet, 10.7%, and the proposed building coverage is 2,511 square feet, 14.99%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 16,752 square feet, where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Mr. Litchfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill Litchfield, once again, here on behalf of the applicants Grant Kaiser and John Furnish, who I believe are with us. Also with us is Colby Mackey of Patrick Ahern Architects. I don't know that Patrick is here, but I know that you're familiar with his plans, and even if he's not here to speak, his plans speak for themselves, because there, as you know, things that come out of that firm are respectful, appropriate, and Colby did a fine job, I think, of designing something which will significantly change what any of you who have driven up Library Lane past the library's rear parking lot in the last 20 years or so have seen. What you saw was a very, very sad, difficult house, an old cape, not an antique, but an old cape which had been run down. It had junk cars and washing machines and everything else in the yard. As Sarah is showing you right there, the house itself, when you got through all the literally garbage, was a fairly simple and attractive house, but it was, calling it dilapidated is an understatement. Among the people who drove up Library Lane and saw that house were Grant Kaiser and John Furnish. And when the house came on the market a little over a year ago, they decided that this was something that they wanted to do to save the neighborhood, a neighborhood in which they're a part, from an eyesore with which it had had to deal for a long time, and to renovate the house, not to tear it down, not because it's an antique, but because they felt that the basic bones of the house were appropriate and were worthy of refurbishing. So they retained Patrick Ahern and Colby Mackey of that firm to design what we think is an appropriate use, an appropriate structure for the largest lot in the neighborhood, but it's still a relatively small house. I would also point out something that you already know, that you received revised plans because there was a concern expressed by Judy Giorgio about the number of bedrooms. That is what is proposed for the main house. There's no change, obviously, in the revised plans as to what you will see. There is an interior change, basically a flipping of the exercise room, which was proposed for above the garage, and a basement bedroom, and we've resolved that, so it will be a maximum of 4 bedrooms. But even though you took a break, I recognize you have a long hearing with more to go, so I will go in, if I may, Mr. Chairman, to the criteria, and then certainly be happy to answer any questions that you may have. As to adequacy of site, the site is shown there. We have a double lot. We have some 16,000 square feet. It is by far the largest on the street. We currently have the lowest coverage at 10.7%. The house meets sideline setbacks, but it is 21.8 feet from the street, where 25 feet is now required. If you look at that site plan, however, while the house is technically 21.8 feet There's a almost, as you know, Library Lane is not a wide street. Legally, it's 33 feet wide, but physically, it's only about 20 feet wide. So there's a swath of about 10 feet, which is not part of the lot, but which we sort of have the benefit of, as shown there. So we're actually set back further from the paved way than the nonconformity might indicate. But if you approve the special permit, you can do so based on the finding that except for the unchanged street setback, we will continue to meet all bulk and dimensional requirements. And again, while the coverage approaches the maximum, there's about 1,500 square feet of green space along the road, which we sort of get the credit for, at least from a visual feel, even though it's within the road layout. The proposed addition to the house, as shown right in the middle of that site plan, and also the proposed garage or carriage house fully comply with all dimensional setback requirements. As the compatibility of size, all of the lots in the neighborhood were created before zoning. Coverage rises up to about 28%, with locus currently at less than half of that. The house is and will remain compatible with the neighborhood. If you look at the third sheet of the handout that you have in front of you, you will see that the footprint is still less than some which are on one lot. There are houses at 2,700 square feet, a couple of them, on lots much smaller than ours. The gross floor area and the living area, even with two structures, one of which is garage, will remain compatible. And again, they are on lower than some on smaller parcels. As to the extent of increase in nonconformity, that's easy. There is none. We currently have 2 lot size and street setbacks. There is no increase whatsoever in nonconformity. Everything we're proposing meets the setbacks. As to suitability of site, the property has been developed for residential use for some 60 years. The neighborhood was developed in the early 50s. There are no conservation issues, and while it's not strictly a natural environment issue, I would observe that in addition to having the Ahern team working for us, Dave Hawk of Hawk Design has prepared a conceptual landscape plan, which I think will do justice to the Ahern architectural plans. As to scale, siting, mass views, and vistas, well, thank you, Sarah has that there. What was once a simple expanded cape, as I said, fell into disrepair. It became something of a neighborhood sore spot, if not an absolute eyesore. And what is proposed now is restoration and preservation rather than demolition, without change in siting of the main house. And it will be, I think, an absolute improvement for the neighborhood and for the town. Obviously, since Grant and John have owned the property over the last year or so, they've cleaned the property up. They got rid of the junk cars and everything else in the yard. They're now waiting, obviously, for your approval before doing anything further. We chose to expand the footprint rather than to go with a full second story, but expanding the footprint not higher than the maximum. And we felt that it would retain the feel and the scale appropriate for the neighborhood. And the positive impact on the streetscape is shown by the very, very strong support demonstrated by the abutter correspondence that the chair will read. As to compatibility, and parenthetically, I didn't write any of it, parenthetically as to compatibility of use, residential use, and that will not change. As to adequacy of water and sewer, I touched very briefly on the concern that Judy Giorgio expressed. Your file should have, and if they don't, they will. My file has a letter from the DPW approving the 4th bedroom. Judy expressed some concern about the room over the carriage house being considered as a bedroom. We felt that it did not because it was open to below, but because we are respectful of municipal concerns. I talked to John and Grant and to Colby, and after reviewing those concerns, we decided the simple way to address them was to call the room above the carriage house a bedroom, call that the 4th bedroom, and move the exercise room, which had been proposed for up there, down to the basement. There was never any intent for a 5th bedroom, but I understand Judy's concerns. Where Sarah now has the cursor, we have the exercise room instead of a bedroom, and that has a 9-foot casement opening, and you walk through it to get to the storage room. So it is not a bedroom and will not be used as such. It'll simply be an exercise room. As to impact on traffic flow and safety, we might have some problems with people slowing down to see a dramatic improvement over what was once there, but it's not a speedway. I will say that the driveway and parking areas were designed and sited to align with those of neighbors and to not interfere with the occasional parking on Library Lane, even though it's not allowed. People with overdue library books sometimes have been known to park there. Noise and litter, aside from previous cleanup, there are no issues there. What is at issue, as you know, is whether completing the process of rescuing this property, including restoring and expanding the original cape, and constructing a barn or garage or carriage house without any increase in nonconformity, is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. And I think that you can find that it is not. Sarah, please take that one down, because I acknowledge there's a cupola and I don't want Mr. Nixon to see it. That's a separate matter. It is, in essence, another Bjorkland-Bransford case, in that there is no change in nonconformity, but obviously it is a substantial alteration, and I think you can find it as a markedly positive one. The street has seen changes over the years, and this is a beneficial one. Certainly not anything detrimental to the neighborhood. And again, the strong abutter support in a neighborhood not known for being shy speaks to any questions you might have about streetscape. So, as I said, I think there could be no question that what is proposed, just based on what used to be there, is going to be a dramatic improvement. But I think you can certainly find the changes sought are not substantially more detrimental. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate on the screen now so that Sarah can recognize you.
I see no one that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
Okay, I will read the correspondence. To begin with, we have a memo. This is from Judith Giorgio, health agent. On 7/7, she writes, I have reviewed the plan to add an addition and a carriage house to the property. The property is connected to the municipal sewer system. The proposal appears to add flow to the property, a fourth bedroom in the main house and a fifth bedroom in the carriage house. Any additional sewer flow must be approved by the sewer department. Then we have a note. This is from Paul Rogers, 94 Seaview Street. Paul writes on July 2nd, I'm a long-term neighbor. I have carefully reviewed the applicant's request for a special permit for the partial demolition of the existing dwelling and the construction of additions, including a new garage. I would like to offer my approval of the applicant's proposal, as I feel that the planned enhancements are fitting to the neighborhood. Then we have a letter from Betty Magnuson. Her address is 58 Library Lane. She writes on June 21st. Grant and John shared their drawings and plans. It's absolutely gorgeous with Cape Cod understated elegance. It's a beautiful proposal, and we are so fortunate that they have been able to create a gorgeous addition to Library Lane. The neighbors on Library Lane greatly treasure what Grant and John hope to accomplish and how they saved us from whatever might have happened. We feel fortunate to have Grant and John as neighbors, and we look forward to the fully renovated house and property. I hope the board shares the values of the owners and of Library Lane, and approves this request. I think I speak on behalf of the neighbors of Library Lane when I ask that you please accept this request. Then we have a note from Dave Thomas, 66 Library Lane, writes on June 26th. I received the notice of the hearing for this. I live at 66, 2 doors down. After reviewing the drawings and plans associated with the application, I write to voice my support for the project and hope you approve it. Then we have a letter, June 23rd, from Peter and Robin Martin, 11 Library Lane. We wanted to express our support for the project proposed for 48. Then we have a quick note. Robert, Maureen, Bobby, Tommy, and Nora Kelly of 27 Library Lane write, the Kelly family has reviewed the Kaiser Furnished Residence proposal, and we are in support. Then we have a letter from Ginny and Paul Goldins. I think, Goldense, June 19th. We're writing this letter in support. My wife Jenny and I own the property at 43 Library Lane, which is directly opposite. We have reviewed the proposed house addition as well as the proposed carriage house construction and the landscaping plans. We fully support this application for a special permit and feel it will blend in nicely with the neighborhood. Then we have a note from Richard and Carol Mack. They live at 55 Library Lane. They write on June 19th. We're writing to show our support in their efforts to remodel the property at 48. We're happy they are making the effort to save this house. The previous owner was in the process of updating the property, and the street is happy that Grant and John are working to keep the design of the property consistent with other homes on the street. We are also pleased with all the work they have already done to improve and maintain the grounds. We know that Grant and John will do a nice job with this project. Then we have a note from Robert and Helen Colby, 67 Library Lane, on June 18th. We're longtime residents, live down the street. We wanted to let you know we support the request that would allow the owners of 48 to remodel, expand the existing house. We hope the board will approve the application. Then we have a note on June 12th from Dr. Dennis Kolodziewski. He writes, he lives at 37 Seaview Terrace. I'm sending this letter, state my support to the application for 48. The project will be a positive improvement to the neighborhood by restoring the existing property, and that's the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask a specific question or would like to voice their concern about this project? If so, please indicate it on the screen so that Sarah can recognize you.
I see no one that wishes to speak in opposition or has a specific question.
Okay, then we'll have questions from the board. Let's start with Dave Veach.
Dave Veach has no questions.
Randy.
Randy has no questions.
Buck.
Buck has no questions.
Megan.
Megan has no questions.
Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson has no questions.
Paul.
Paul has no questions.
Oh, I figured you would. Saved you for the end? Okay. I have no
I
questions.
take it back. I do have questions. I have a list of questions here that I'm going to... No, I have no questions.
Great. Motion?
All right, this is Paul Semple. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Need to vote on that, Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Paul?
Semple votes yes.
Dave Thompson?
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Veach votes yes.
I vote yes. Deliberations? Start with Randy.
Well, it meets all the criteria. It looks like a great project, and it's nice that the neighbors are also happy, and I would support it if I were voting.
Buck?
It would be very hard to say this substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, considering what we started with. So I agree with Mr. Litchfield 100%, and I will support.
Megan?
I think it would be very hard to say it was detrimental to the neighborhood given the correspondence. And I appreciate that they are upgrading the house that is currently there, though I would not necessarily call what they're doing understated.
Paul?
The only thing that I was missing, frankly, was an elevation that would show the whole buildings, not only the house, but also the carriage house, so that you got some feel for what this spread out looked like, because I don't quite see that there. I do agree with Mr. Litchfield that these letters obviously were not written by him because they're too articulate to have. So, but I think as a result, I will approve from my viewpoint.
Mr. Thompson?
Mr. Thompson thinks it's an absolutely wonderful addition to that section of town. It's not often that you see all the neighbors in agreement. This is fantastic.
Yeah, and we've had some projects down there when it was sort of the other side of the coin. Mr. Veach?
Well, I agree with all the previous, and it's a nice-looking project. It's well done, and I think it'll be quite an improvement for the neighborhood and the town.
Yes, keep away from the sharks. I agree with you, Paul. When I was looking at it, Karen Kempton, when she comes in front of us, has a great virtual tour of the property, and wouldn't that have been wonderful? But I know it cost like $1,000 more or whatever it is, so I guess it wasn't to be. What do you think about conditions on this, Paul?
Well, it seems to me, we've just been through a lot of construction on that street with not only the library itself doing the roof and so forth, but also the projects that we've approved.
Across the street,
Across
yeah.
the street.
Yeah.
And they did manage it pretty well. I mean, you could generally get up and down there, although there were some tight spots. But here you've got a double lot to work with. So, Bill, can you address the issue as to how you will handle that?
Yeah, thank you, through the chair, if I could. Yes, Mr. Semple, I was going to say exactly what you just said, that we have a much, much larger lot, and I don't think there's going to be an issue. Obviously, given the concern that John and Grant have expressed for with their neighbors and the support of their neighbors, I can guarantee you that there's not going to be any blocking of Library Lane. So I'm not sure really that I mean, it's certainly a condition that Library Lane not be blocked is fine, although it's not necessary. I don't think that you, given the size of the lot that we have, I don't think that you need to impose those conditions. And I think also the neighbors would be very, very pleased to see work commence and proceed and get done sooner rather than later, even if it does go, into June.
So are you saying that there should not be any restriction about construction between June 30th and Labor Day?
That would be my preference, because the other consideration that we have is something that has come up before. How quickly can we get a builder to do this? It is not a short project. I can't say this is a 3-month job, but I think it's so long as we leave Library Lane open, if there are any concerns from neighbors, I know that John and Grant will address them.
Okay. One interesting aspect here is that I don't think the traffic on Library Lane is limited to the summertime, because there's a load of people that use the library itself and park along that road, including me, among others, in order to go into the library and take a look at what they want to see. I think the key would be that the road be open, and that's the primary one that I'm thinking of.
I agree with you, Paul. I think that the condition should be there's no parking, no construction parking on Library Lane.
And we would have no trouble with that, sir.
Just period,
Yeah.
Never mind the time frame. That's year-round stuff.
Well, I'll move to approve the application as submitted with the restriction that there be no parking of construction vehicles on Library Lane.
Dave Veach seconds.
Need to vote? Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Paul?
Sample votes yes.
Dave Thompson?
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Beach?
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. That's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much, Mr. Litchfield.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Sarah, we have 21-053.
Application number 21-053, Laurie B. Fromer Trust, care of William G. Litchfield, Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owner of property located at 22 Diane Drive, also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map, 6C, Block 60, Lot G118. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the construction of second-floor additions. The existing dwelling is nonconforming, and that it is located partially within the Coastal Conservancy District, floodplain elevation 11. The proposed second-floor additions will be located within the 50-foot setback to the Coastal Conservancy District. The building coverage will remain nonconforming at 1,761 square feet, 47.8%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 3,685 square feet of buildable upland and contains 10,032 square feet, where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Mr. Litchfield.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman. Bill Litchfield here on behalf of Jason and Laurie Fromer, or more technically the Laura B. Fromer Trust, Laurie B. Fromer Trust. I believe that Jason and Laurie are with us. This is, and again, given the time that is, you're 3 hours into the hearing, so I'll be relatively brief. Excuse me. This is a relatively simple proposal. What we are proposing to do is to create some additional living space to be built on the existing footprint. There is a partial second story. That is the site plan there. We're here because of lot size and also because the floodplain runs through our lot. This entire neighborhood is an old guided subdivision. You've been out there many, many times. And you are aware that the lots are non-conforming, that they were, generally speaking, seasonal residences, and people are now updating the homes to make them possible for year-round living. So what is proposed, as shown there, is to fill in some holes basically on the second story. There's an existing second story. And we are proposing to add some additional living space, but to do all of it on the existing footprint, so there's no change in coverage. As to the criteria, like everything in the neighborhood with one exception, we have a non-conforming lot. It's adequate for the 50-odd-year-old ranch or raised ranch that is there now. But again, the floodplain contour runs through the house. The site is adequate for the additional living space, again, to be built completely on the existing footprint. No change in coverage, no change in setbacks. There is proposed a conforming, not non-conforming, but a conforming exterior mechanical appliance system, but that's to be elevated above the flood zone. As to compatibility, all of the lots, again, were created before zoning. Coverage rises up to almost 24%. We're at 17%, but the house is and will remain compatible with the neighborhood. On the third sheet of the handout that is shown. The ridge height is 11 feet below the maximum allowed, so we're not towering over anything. There is more living area as shown on the third page than in some other houses, but we also have a larger house, rather a larger lot than do many others. And as to the extent of increase in nonconformity, there's none. There's no increase whatsoever in nonconformity. As to suitability of site, notwithstanding the flood zone, the lot has been developed for half a century. The neighborhood has been developed since the late 40s. The chair will read a letter from the Conservation Commission indicating that they have reviewed the proposal, have already approved it. So that was taken care of some weeks ago. As to scale, siting, mass, views, and vistas, we have an early 70s house in an area with a variety of styles. Unlike many of them, however, this meets the street and sideline setbacks. And again, it's an evolving, formerly summer neighborhood. But what we're proposing here, and that's the rear view, is a fairly attractive, we hope, New England vernacular designed by Paul McCarthy of Zebrat and McCarthy. No change in siting. The petitioners have discussed it with the neighbors, and once again, the chair is going to have a job to do because there is a volume of positive comments from the neighbors of Jason and Laurie, which I think speaks to the neighborhood's views on this change and on the streetscape. As the compatibility of use, there's no change. Residential use, adequacy of water and sewer, the health agent has no concerns, and we have a Title V septic. So the question, as you know, is to whether expanding the second floor over the existing footprint with no increase in coverage or nonconformity is substantially more detrimental than the current nonconforming house in a nonconforming lot. It is, again, a Bransford case in that there's no change in nonconformity, but the enlarged second floor is deemed as a substantial alteration, thus require a special permit. The neighborhood has seen changes in recent years, and this is of a piece I think you could find with that trend. It is consistent with rather than detrimental to the neighborhood. And I think, again, the strong abutter support that the chair will read speaks to questions about impact on the neighborhood and the streetscape. So in light of the criteria in the plans, I think that you can find, and hope that you will find, that the change sought is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. Jason, Laurie, and I would certainly be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this proposal? If so, please indicate on the screen that you would like Sarah to recognize you. There
is no one that wishes to speak in support of this proposal.
Okay, we got as Mr. Litchfield said, sort of lengthy correspondence, but we'll do it as quickly as possible. First of all, we have a memo from Judith Giorgio. I've reviewed the plan to add an addition of a second floor to the property. The proposed plan moves a bedroom to the second, but will not add septic flow to the property above the approved 3-bedroom capacity. Then Nicole Smith, our conservation agent, writes on July 9th, the application was approved by the Conservation Commission on June 23rd and has been issued. Then we have a note from Philip Murray and Karen McLevy, 18 Patterson Road. They write on July 15th, we wish to express our full support for the renovation. As neighbors, we view the proposed renovation as a clear improvement of the property and a distinct benefit to the neighborhood. We fully support approval of the project and would be pleased to discuss the matter. Then we have a note from Mike and Marcy Farmer, 32 Nantucket Drive. They write on July 13th, Lori and Jason are excellent neighbors, and we are thrilled that they are enhancing their commitment to the neighborhood by dorming out their attic. While we are not direct abutters, we'll fully support their remodeling plan and hope that this email in support of their endeavor makes your approval process easier. Then we have a note, July 11th, from Lisa Evans, 87 Nantucket Drive, who writes, I'm writing to express my enthusiastic support. I reside at 87 and see 22 Diane Drive from my front windows. The Fromers have already made some outstanding aesthetic improvements to their home and property. I believe their proposed additions will improve the quote-unquote curb appeal of the house and bring it more in line with the general style of the neighborhood. The Fromers have proven to be respectful and considerate neighbors, and I have full faith and they will manage their construction project with as little disruption to all of us neighbors as possible. Then we have a note from Joanne Conroy, and her address is 39 Diane Drive. We live across the street. They've informed us of their desire to have the renovations. After reviewing the plans, we feel the renovations will be a good fit for the neighborhood. The addition of dormers to the attic will both increase living space while making the house more aesthetically pleasing for the neighbors. We fully support the proposed renovations and look forward to seeing the completed project. Then we have an email from Donna and Gwen Crowther, 14 Diane Drive. On July 8th, they write, we wholeheartedly support the application of the Fromers to add to their home. They are our neighbors directly to the north on Diane Drive, shared their plans with us, and we find them to be keeping with the neighborhood. Then we have a note from Steve and Glenda Schneider. They live at 97 Diane Drive, right on July 6th. Because my house deck at 97 looks directly at the front of the Fromer home, any changes are important to me. The Fromers were kind enough to let me review their building plans. We strongly support their planned house changes since they actually greatly improve the design balance of the house without adding to the building bulk. The result of their improvements is a much improved view from my deck in the street. Then Kevin Fay and Dr. Maura McCullough write from 29 Diane Drive on July 5th. Please know that Jason and Laurie have our full support. We see no adverse impacts on us nor in the neighborhood. We see this as quite beneficial. Then Peter and Liz Kelly of 20 Nantucket Drive write on July 5th, my wife and I are neighbors. We have known the Fromer family since they purchased the property in a neighborhood where the homes are close and the people even closer. It's nice to see updates that enhance livability while keeping continuity with the surrounding properties. We wholeheartedly support the modifications they're making to their house. And then Marianne and Bob Fitzpatrick of 68 Diane Drive, right on July 4th. We're contacting you to notify you of our support. We are residents and hope you can assist them in moving forward with this project. Then David and Liz Renke of 57 Diane, right on July 4th. This letter is in support. I reside at 57 Diane, have no complaints or reservations to the proposed construction. Please record us as being strongly in favor. Then, I think they already wrote. No, they're using, well, they're still using the same name. On the 5th, they write, we're neighbors. We're writing to let you know we totally support. Seems to be the same folks. Then Chuck Feeney and Jan Feeney Wright of 14 Nantucket Drive on July 4th. We support the renovation application. And then we have a note from Andrew Abu, and he writes, Jane and I live at 49 Patterson Road, and we would like to express our strong support. The Fromers have an architecturally pleasing and appropriate plan, which will make the home even more attractive and respects the Cape Cod aesthetic very well. They're terrific, community-minded neighbors, and we wholeheartedly support the improvements they wish to make. Thanks very much. And that is it. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to express a question or the dismay of this project? If so, please indicate it on the screen so that Sarah can recognize you.
I see no one that has a specific question or wishes to speak in opposition.
Okay, we'll have questions. Megan, questions?
I have no questions.
Paul?
I have no questions.
Dave Thompson?
Dave Thompson has no questions.
Dave V?
Dave Veach has no questions.
Randy?
Randy has no questions.
Buck?
Buck has no questions.
Paul?
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
We need a vote on that, Buck?
Yes.
Semple votes yes.
Thompson, yes.
Veach votes yes.
I vote yes. Okay, deliberations. Paul?
Well, frankly, initially I had some concern about this because it looked to me to be a big house. When you look at the addition and so forth going onto it, and as I look at the square footage on the form here, it's a lot. It's a large increase in the square footage, but I think the support of the neighborhood is significant, and I think probably with more and more conversions in that area, it's probably going to be more and more of the same thing. So I think overall it's not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, so I will vote in favor of it.
Dave Thompson?
I agree on that 100%. It's another situation where you've got the backing of the whole neighborhood. Fantastic.
Dave Veach?
Yeah, it meets all of our criteria, and it is in keeping with the neighborhood and as it's expressed by the neighborhood. So I'll support it.
Randy?
I agree with everything that has been said, and I would support it by voting.
Buck?
Neighborhood support is key, and I will go along with the neighbors.
Megan?
I had exactly the same concerns as Paul. I think it's a significant increase in square footage, but again, the neighbors spoke.
Right. Paul, conditions?
Well, I guess we ought to listen to Bill and see what they have in mind. Clearly, they're going to start, I guess, after Labor Day, but it's a very busy area in the summertime. I noticed the speed bumps in there. I didn't notice speed bumps when I've been through there before, and they certainly slow things down, but the road itself is not very wide. So, Bill, what's the situation?
The speed bumps, as I understand it, given what's gone in the neighborhood, are a result of ZBA member visits. There's been a great deal of traffic. No, we would anticipate in this neighborhood that there would be no exterior construction during the summer months limitation. So that would be anticipated in this neighborhood, and we would expect that.
And would you also expect that construction vehicles and activity would be contained on site?
Contained on site, or I guess my preference, given their relationship with the neighborhood, they might be parking in other neighbors' yards with permission. So kept off of the streets or ways, I think would be appropriate.
All right, I think I would move for approval then of the application as submitted with the provision that all construction activity and vehicles be contained on site or by permission by neighboring homeowners, and that between June 30th and Labor Day, no exterior construction would be allowed, no work should be permitted on weekends, and construction activity between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only.
Dave Veach seconds.
We need to vote on that. Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Paul?
Sample votes yes.
Dave Thompson?
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Dave Veach?
Dave Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. That's a unanimous vote. Thank you, Mr. Litchfield.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Sarah, 21-054.
Application number 21-054. Catherine and James Caruso, care of Thad Eldridge, 1038 Main Street, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owners of property located at 8 Scallop Terrace, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 16A, Block 23B, Lot H14G. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and construction of a new dwelling. The dwelling is and will remain nonconforming as it is located entirely within the Coastal Conservancy District, floodplain elevation 13, where a 50-foot setback is required. The existing dwelling is nonconforming in that it is located 6.2 feet from Scallop Terrace, 18.3 feet from the northerly abutter, 13.1 feet from the southerly abutter, and 5.4 feet from the easterly abutter. The proposed dwelling will be nonconforming in that it will be located 8.5 feet from Scallop Terrace, where a 40-foot setback is required, 14.3 feet from the northerly abutter, 5 feet from the southerly abutter, and 4.5 feet from the easterly abutter, where a 25-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 695 square feet, and the proposed building coverage is 830 square feet, where 2,800 square feet is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 0 square feet of buildable upland where 20,000 square feet is required, and contains 3,232 square feet where 40,000 square feet is required in an R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Protective Bylaw.
Thad,
Good afternoon.
how are you?
For the record, thank you. How are you?
All right.
Good. All righty. So for the record, Thad Eldridge, East Southeast. You're representing the Carusos. I believe they're on the line. We have yet another house down in the Little Beach area that will be elevated. And we're here before you with that. As Sarah mentioned, non-conforming just about in every direction. They're proposing to take down the existing home. If anybody noticed, the roof has an excellent bow to it. And I'm sorry to ask, Sarah, am I able to share my screen?
I have no problem with that.
Okay, I will do that in one moment. We'll keep you with yours for now. I didn't even log into that one. So they've been watching that roof bow more and more every year, and they've finally decided that it's time to raise the home. They selected a post and beam style house. In the application, I mentioned that the 6-inch panels were not available at the time of the application and that 10-inch panels would be used, making the house a little bit bigger. The 6-inch panels are available again, making the house a little bit smaller, just 4 inches on each side. To run through the criteria very quickly, the adequacy of the size of the site, it's certainly small, but it's certainly large enough to support the minor increase that they're proposing. The main increase that they are proposing is a 100 square foot enclosed porch that will take advantage of the westerly views of the sunset. Compatibility of the size of the proposed structure with the neighboring properties. With the exception of the Starfish condominiums and outermost marina, most of the footprints in this area range from 530 to 1540. The proposed 830 is well within the Cinderella range there. The extent of the proposed increase, there are minor increases, 35 square feet of building coverage, 100 square feet for a raised porch. There are outdoor living spaces proposed, the deck right off the south. It's not at all uncommon for us to request that because once you go up, you want to stay up. So the proposal will improve the stormwater. Conservation asked us to remove more pavement than we had originally proposed. So now we'll have more pervious area. We are within properties within 100 feet of a wetland across the street, but again, things are only getting better. I'll save the mass question for a moment. So with the exception of the marina, all of the neighboring uses are residential. There's a shared Title V septic system. There will be no impact on traffic flow, noise, litter. So there is a lateral expansion being proposed within the floodplain, and that is a porch, walls, and deck. Everything's elevated, so it maintains a very similar impervious area on the site. And then you have the reduction of the paved driveways, which will help from that end. And here we go. The question of mass has always been an important question out here.
So just leave this one, not the one below.
And if I may share my screen now. Okay, so at the last hearing in this area, we were discussing the mass because that is an important question. And one of the members mentioned that thought of this area as a one-story neighborhood. So we looked at it, and I provided a page within the application that showed what are we looking at here. I've recolored that here. Everything in green contains a one-story house. Everything in yellow contains a greater than 1, less than 2, and everything in red contains a 2 based upon the assessor's information. So there are a number of one-story dwellings in the neighborhood. The more interesting one, though, all of the special permits that have been granted. So in this area, everything in green is a special permit that was granted that maintained a one-story dwelling, even if elevated. And some of those were for decks and other more minor proposals. The one property in blue was a 1.5 story going to a 1.5 story. The properties in yellow were a 1 story going to a 1.5. The properties in red were a 1 story going to a 2 story, and the properties in purple were a 2 story going to a 2 story. So it really paints the picture that the neighborhood is on the rise, both with the first floor and second floors. So that seems to be a common theme. When somebody goes up, they also go up. With that, hopefully that answers the mass question, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate it on the screen so that Sarah can recognize you.
I see no one that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
Okay, I'll read the correspondence. The first is from Jay Briggs, who is the building commissioner for the town of Chatham. He writes on June 30th to Thad, after further review, I believe the intent of the bylaw was for the quote-unquote story to contain habitable space. Appendix 2, maximum building height stories, footnote 6, states a building may contain a finished basement or finished attic, but in no case shall both attic and basement areas be used as habitable space. So for dwellings located in the floodplain, the basement, which cannot contain finished space, shall not be considered a story. Sorry for any confusion with the previous email. Then we have a note from Nicole Smith, building conservation agent, on July 20th, writes, 8 Scallop Terrace was approved by the Conservation Commission and a permit was issued with conditions. Judith Giorgio writes on 7/14, I've reviewed the plan to demo the dwelling. The existing dwelling is connected to a shared septic. The proposed plan will not increase the septic flow to the existing dwelling and is therefore acceptable. Then we have a note from Charlie Sapanaro, who writes on July 7th, good afternoon, I'm writing to support this application to demolish and build a new building at number 8. I currently own 2 homes, number 3 and number 8 Oyster Drive. I have known Kathy and Jim for almost 20 years, and they are both great neighbors who have a true love for the area. I also know the risks of the flooding. Having experienced it myself, I believe they should be able to build a more up-to-date structure built to today's requirements in order to be safe from any future flooding. I also know they are looking to spend more time in their retirement in this home and could use some extra space. As someone who can see their home from my home and lives in the neighborhood and has known the Carusos for many years, I support their application, would be happy to answer any questions. Then Heidi and Brendan Driscoll at 157 Morris Island, right, on 6/9. We're neighbors to the Carusos. We fully support their efforts to elevate the home. And we understand that the mass will increase, but this will not be a detriment to the streetscape or the neighborhood. And these seem to be pretty much the same. These are part of the same letters.
Well, they're, yeah, the same context, but just different people.
Yeah, okay. We have a situation. I'm going to read who they're from. If I can find that page, Sarah. Oh, it's the first page. Okay, the following people have essentially written the same letter. And they're Todd Nickerson, 16 Oyster Drive, Tim and Tracy Jewell, 2 Oyster Drive, David and Lisa Howe, 2 Scallop Terrace, Terry McLaughlin, 27 Clamshell Drive, Heidi and Brendan Driscoll, 157 Morris Island, Mr. and Mrs. Henry Cushman, 9 Scallop Terrace, and Susan Hamill, 16 Scallop Terrace. And the letter was what I read you from the Driscolls. I'll read it again. We're neighbors. We fully support their efforts to elevate the home to floodplain standards and their proposal of a modest increase to the size of the home. We understand the mass will increase, but this will not be detrimental to the streetscape or the neighborhood. So then we have a note on June 10th. This is from Paul and Patricia Swenson, 3 Scallop Terrace. We're neighbors of the Carusos. We fully support their efforts to elevate their home. Although the mass will increase, we strongly believe the new home will fit nicely into the evolving neighborhood and streetscape. We elevated our home on Scallop Terrace in 2019 to protect the value of our real estate in response to the flooding which occurred in 2018. The Carusos are responding to the same concerns of protecting their home as are many other homeowners in the Little Beach area. We hope the zoning board approves. And that's it. If there's anybody in the audience who would like to speak either against this proposal or has a specific question, please indicate on the screen now so that Sarah can recognize you.
I see no one that wishes to speak in opposition or has a specific question.
Okay, questions from the board. Buck.
I have no questions.
Megan.
Megan has no questions.
Paul.
Paul has no questions.
Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson has no questions.
Dave Veach.
Dave Veach has no questions.
Randy.
Randy Potash has no questions.
And I have none. Okay.
This is
Motion,
Paul
please.
Semple. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Need a vote, Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Paul.
Semple votes yes.
Dave Thompson.
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Dave Veach.
Dave Veach votes yes.
I vote yes. Deliberations. Megan.
I appreciate this project. I think it's obviously necessary to raise some of the houses. I think that they haven't tried to excessively increase the size. I recognize that there's a lot of neighbor support. My concern with that, and I guess this would go for any neighborhood, although specifically this one, is that everyone is sort of in the same boat with regard to having to do this. And so I don't see that there are altruistic reasons for writing these letters. So that would be my concern with the neighbors' letters. But with regard to the specific property, sans the neighborhood approval, I might be inclined to approve it anyway.
Paul?
Yes, I think it's a continuation of the elevation in the Little Beach areas. We're not happy with having to do it, but on the other hand, I think it's probably a necessary evil. So I think I will support the application.
Dave Thompson?
Dave Thompson is going to support it, and it may be a necessary evil, but if I was down there, I'd be doing the same thing.
Yeah, I will support this. This is, it's really still a modest structure, and the addressing of I mean, you can't elevate a building without increasing the apparent massing. It's not possible. So, in some instances, this not being one of them, you can temper it with landscaping, but there's not really enough around here to do that, or in this neighborhood. So I think it's a thoughtful plan that's been presented, and it's absolutely necessary, and it's not substantially more detrimental at all. Thanks.
Randy?
I agree that it's not substantially detrimental. It seems like a more than reasonable and actually very prudent addition to the neighborhood.
Buck?
Without the strong support of the neighbors, I might waste your time and tell you why I wouldn't support it, but I'm going to support it.
Yeah, and Megan, you said it when you said everybody's on the same boat. I mean, that's no joke.
Except they're not homes.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, I mean, it's, as long as they don't push the envelope too far.
Exactly.
And we've had situations where they pushed it too far, and we can say no, so. Okay, Paul, I don't know about conditioning it, but it
Well,
can't happen. Nothing can happen in the summer down there. I mean, nothing.
Yeah, I think I'll move to approve the application as submitted with the condition that all construction activity and vehicles either be contained on site or on other properties where permission has been granted. And that between June 30th and Labor Day, no exterior construction will be allowed, no work shall be permitted on the weekends, and construction activity would be between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only.
Dave Veach seconds.
Need to vote, Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Paul?
Sample votes yes.
Dave Thompson?
Dave Thompson votes yes.
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you, Thad. That's a unanimous vote.
Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon.
Okay. I ditched my... I'll give it back. Oh, all right. I don't know what I did with mine. I know it's a sign. Application 21-055.
Application number 21-055, PNG LLC, care of John Hess and Jennifer Allard, P.O. Box 415, East Orleans, Mass. 02643, lessee of the property located at 214C Orleans Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 14H, Block 64, Lot X 214C. The applicant seek an appeals permit under Section 225-19 of the Town of Chatham sign bylaw to allow the placement of a 24-inch by 92-inch, 15.3 square foot wall sign. The lot contains 2.1 acres in the SB and R40 zoning district. The proposed sign requires an appeals permit under Section 225-19 of the Chatham sign bylaw.
So who do we have as presenter of this application? I guess we'd be looking for either Jennifer or Jennifer Allard. Are you out there?
We have one
person that's phoned in, but I'm not sure. I think that might be Mr. Zebr's phone number.
Well,
If you like, I can show you the sign.
sure.
So this is Sarah Clark, Central Permitting Coordinator. This is in the Nickerson Corners Plaza. I believe it's an interior unit. Many of the other signs in this complex have come before the board. It's a blue background with white lettering, 24 inches high by 92 inches long, going in the existing border that is set into the shingles. Yes, so they did receive a temporary sign permit in order to place it up so she could start her business. This sign has been approved by the HBDC. Any sign in this complex is required to come to the zoning board because of the restrictions. Specifically, this one is located entirely within the R40 zone, so any sign that they did would require approval regardless of the size.
And I would have to say our criteria, the specific site is appropriate for a sign, yes. Proposed signs will not be a nuisance or a hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, I hope not. The proposed sign or signs will not adversely affect properties, no, because it's being part of that neighborhood. The special requirements for the permit are in accord with the general spirit, and so I think that all the criteria is answered. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this? Excuse me, Sarah.
There is no one in the audience that wishes to speak in favor of this.
All right, I'll read the correspondence. Number one, from the HBDC, they, on May 19th, voted 5-0 to approve it, and they didn't have any specific condition. Then the Sarah Drone, our tax and collector treasurer, writes on July 1st, it appears that they paid their bill late and they're short $7. Yeah.
I'll pay it, I know her.
Oh, you do? All right, okay. And then John Burke writes, John, on July 22nd, today, I received a notice in the mail. As the management of this Nickerson Corners complex, the trustees have not heard anything from these applicants. The management has always had approval rights on any new sign at the complex. Management wants to ensure that all signs on the complex are similar in looks and are a similar dark blue color and have similar size fonts and no individual logos. Could the ZBA help enforce this? With 22 units there, it could be a real mess if everybody had something different going on. Well, the answer is no. That's not our job to enforce this kind of thing. So I understand their concern, but they need to take it up amongst themselves. Okay, so does anybody have any questions? Well, nobody's going to answer them, so forget it. So I guess we need a motion, Paul, to go into deliberation.
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
All right, vote. Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Semple votes yes.
Mr. Thompson votes yes.
Veach votes
And I
yes.
vote yes. Okay. What does anybody want to say about this?
It's a pretty sign.
Yeah,
The sign,
It is in fact that blue color.
and if it seemed to me to fit fine with what it is.
the sign fits right in. Oh, this could be our only opportunity to turn down Sarah. I mean, when you think about it. But no, I guess we won't do that.
It certainly meets all of the criteria
Thank
and is a nice-looking sign.
Yep.
And in keeping with the neighboring signs in the complex. So I certainly think that we can approve it and be happy to.
Having a sign is very helpful in that particular.
I would think so,
Yes, yes.
because, who's going to know you're there?
So this is Paul Semple. I'll move to approve the application as submitted.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck
Okay.
votes yes.
Vote, Buck, yep, yes.
Semple
Paul?
votes yes.
Dave Thompson?
Yes.
Dave Veach?
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. That brings us to 21-058.
Application number 21-058, Hillary Folks, care of Mark Zebrat, 63 Kroll Road, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 16 Flake Yard Way, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 2A, Block 45, Lot 60. The applicant seeks a dimensional variance under Section 8D2C from the requirements of Appendix 2 to allow for the placement of an exterior mechanical system appliance, heat pump / compressor. The proposed appliance will be located 5 feet from the easterly abutter where a 15-foot setback is required. A dimensional variance is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 10, and Section 8D2C of the Chatham Protective Bylaw.
Mr. Zebrat, how are you?
I'm well. Do you have me?
We didn't wake you up, did we?
Well, it's been a long afternoon. I'm sure it's been a long one for you folks, too. Board members, good afternoon. On August 8, 2019, we came before you requesting a special permit to enlarge the existing dwelling as well as install 2 mechanical devices on the east side of the structure. The board granted the permit with the exception that the mechanical units be located on the north side, respecting the building setbacks. During the course of the project, it was determined that the location of the units on the north side as required was not ideal, and the owner requested that I go back to the board to see what process would be required to relocate the units back to the original proposed location on the east side. I spoke with Sarah Clark at the building department to determine the process to appeal the condition. It was my understanding that units attached to a building did not need to meet sideline setbacks, only units on the ground as stated in the bylaw. Sarah spoke with the commissioner and determined that mechanical devices need to meet setback installed either on the ground or attached to buildings and would require a variance. We are here today to request that variance. If filing for an application for a variance, Administration Zoning Board of Appeals powers variance, the following must be addressed before the board. With respect to the particular land or structure or building, owing to circumstances relating to the soil conditions, shape or topography of the land, structure of the building, especially affecting such land, structure, building, and little enforcement of the provisions of the bylaw would involve substantial hardship, financial or otherwise, to the applicant or the petitioner, and that desirable relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public and good without nullifying or substantially degrading from the intent and purpose of the bylaw. Circumstances relating to the shape and the topography. The small area on the north side of the house is the only flat area next to the house suitable for recreation. Placing the compressors on this side of the house will interfere with the use of this area as a play area. The traffic flow of the yard goes tightly around the corner, and placing the compressors on the corner will get in the way. The requested alternative location would eliminate both these issues since the compressors would be tucked away within a jog in the building on the side that isn't used for recreation or foot traffic and will be provided with plantings. Circumstances relating to the building. The current proposed locations of the compressor is directly beneath the master bedroom window. The requested alternative location would be beneath the kitchen and living room windows across from the neighbor's porch and kitchen. All of the mechanical equipment will be in a niche in the basement under the kitchen. The requested alternative location would simplify the installation of new HVAC system in the building and make it less expensive. It would also reduce the pipework and ducting in the basement and improve the functionality of the space. No substantial detriment to the public good. The requested variance can be granted without any substantial detriment to the public good. The immediate butters, the Masseys, and the neighbors next over, the Bogarts, have no objection to the proposed placement. You should have supporting emails. The projected noise limit is limited in any way not be next to the neighbor's sleeping quarters. Large propane tanks had previously been located on the ground in this location and was a pre-existing use of this area within the setback. Compressors would be placed on brackets fixed to the house and would be off the ground. This will improve the external appearance of the house since the compressor will no longer be visible from the road or from the neighbors to the north and west. This is a neighborhood of closely packed houses. Growing up in Chatham, most houses did not have air conditioning. Today, it is very common to retrofit existing houses with air conditioning. I would suggest that most of the houses in the area have existing non-conforming mechanical devices or request to install them in the future. The neighbors on the west side have their compressors within the setback only 3.5 feet from the property bound. And I believe you have a photo showing those compressors. The proposed location our case would be approximately 5 feet from the property boundary. No substantial derogation from the intent and the purpose of the bylaw. Because there would be no substantial detriment to the public good, the butters are fine with the proposed location. It will improve both the appearance and external and internal functionality of the property. The requested variance would not represent a substantial degradation from the intent and purpose of the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this proposal? If so, please indicate on the screen so that Sarah can recognize you.
I see no one that wishes to speak in favor of this application.
Okay, we have a memo on the correspondence. We have a memo from Judith Giorgio on 7/14. She writes, I've reviewed the plan to vary the sideline setback requirement for the exterior mechanical appliances. Compressor of this property have no concerns. Then William Bogardus of 16 Love Lane writes on, well, we received it on July 21st. I'm writing in support of this application. I live 2 houses to the east and have no objection to the proposed location of the heat pump / compressor. From looking at the property, this plan makes sense to me. Please take this as a vote of approval. And then we have an email from Ann Schmidt and Massey Schmidt for the Massey Family Cottage. And she writes on July 18th, the Massey Cottage neighbors at 15 Flakeyard Way want to express that we have no objections to the exterior mechanical system / compressor for the heat pumps being on the east side of 16 Flakeyard Way. We are aware that you are seeking a variance and we are in support of your plan. We have had appropriate communication with you about this. As always, you have communicated with us as your project has advanced, and we appreciate all you've done to be best of neighbors. Thank you for keeping us up to date. And that is the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either against this or has a specific question? If so, indicate now so that Sarah can recognize you now on the screen, that is.
There is no one in the audience that wishes to speak in opposition or has a specific question.
Okay, questions. Let's start with Buck.
So, Mark, I'm not, where was the position in the 2019 approval?
Right where we're showing it now. In 2019, we had asked for 2 compressors at that spot. We have reduced that down to 1 compressor, and the new compressors are substantially more quiet than the older ones. To give you a general idea, in a cooling cycle, this thing produces 53 decibels. In a heating cycle, it produces 55. To give you some kind of context of what that means, a household refrigerator generates about 55 decibels. A whisper gives you 25 decibels, and a conversation is normally 60 to 70 decibels. So this is quieter than a normal conversation when running.
Mark,
Yes.
my concern was related to the setback. It looks like what you're asking for now is a setback approval on a 2.6 foot setback. I thought the owners felt that the original approved location was not ideal, and that's why they want to move it to this 2.6. I was wondering where this less than ideal location was.
It was on the north side of the dwelling. I think you have a floor plan of the building in your packet. Sheet A3.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All set.
I do not have any questions.
Paul?
Mark, just two things. One is if the compressors are located where they were approved before under the special permit, they would comply with existing zoning?
They would comply with a front yard setback. They have to go close to that corner because there's a 50-foot conservancy setback right on that corner.
So in order to place the compressors where they were approved or suggested by the zoning board, they would not require any zoning relief?
They would not.
I pointed out, I think, when we had the discussion back in 2019, that the zoning compliance table reflected frontage of 100 feet as required, existing, and proposed, which I think at that time you said you agreed with me that that was an error by Ryder or Wilcox, but I see the same thing as reflected on the May 27th plan this year. Is that just a consistent
That's
error?
probably just the same plan they've been editing as we've been going along, revising things on the site.
They just didn't make the revision as to frontage?
Correct.
Okay. I don't think I have any other questions.
Dave T?
Dave Thompson has no questions.
Dave Veach?
Dave Veach has no questions.
Randy?
I do have a question, sir. The original location that had been approved, that was in the play area that you now, and is that why you want to move it?
Yeah, I don't know if you had a chance to go to the lot. It's a sloping lot.
Yep.
It slopes from that northwest side down. So that's really the only level yard area that they have, and they really want to keep that area open.
So but that is true. The reason why you want to move it is because it interferes with the play area.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, this is Paul Semple. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Vote? Buck?
Yes.
Semple votes yes.
Dave T?
Dave T votes yes.
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, deliberations. Paul?
As you know, we're constrained by the law with respect to the question of variance. It's considered to be an extraordinary zoning remedy, and one which is not normally suggested or agreed to under our current zoning restrictions. In this situation, we have the ability to place the compressors in a location which does not require any zoning relief and would comply with all zoning. I realize that's not necessarily the spot where they would prefer to have this, but they are constrained by the size of the lot and the location of the lot. The topography of the lot seems to me to be very similar to the one which is next door to the west, and not particularly unusual for small lots in this area. So I guess my reaction is to say that given that there is relief available without any action by the zoning board, that a variance clearly is not something which would be available under our law, and that even if a variance were considered, the topography I don't think would necessarily authorize it. So For all of those reasons, I am not inclined to agree that a variance should be granted.
Dave Thompson.
I'm inclined to agree with Paul Semple on this. When we okayed everything a couple of years ago, where we stated that the proposed compressors would go, nobody seemed to mind back then. I think we should stick with that. I would vote no.
Dave Each.
I'm wrestling with this one. I think Paul has made a very good argument, and I have, from time to time, been sometimes liberal in my interpretations of the law with respect to variances, and sometimes this is a tough one. I'd like to say that I can find that it meets the criteria, but I'm just afraid that we don't. That it just doesn't really. The hardship portion just doesn't meet the standard for hardship, and so I will reluctantly vote against it.
Randy.
I would agree with everybody else that has spoken so far, and I would just say this is a textbook example of the tension between what a homeowner would like to do and what the law permits. And if I were voting out of fairness to people that have come in the past and those who are going to come in the future, I would have to not support it.
Buck.
Well, I'm going along with the rest of the board. I don't like saying no, and I would only suggest that if the reading of the tea leaves go as I've heard, you might want to consider withdrawing without prejudice.
Megan.
I agree with Buck on his point, and I just don't think it raises to the level of hardship that we would need to be able to approve it.
Mark, you've heard what everybody thinks. I would agree with 100% with what they said. Would you like to withdraw or not?
Yeah, I'd like to withdraw without prejudice.
Okay. Would you make a motion, please?
This is Paul Semple. I'll move to approve the application to withdraw without prejudice.
Dave Each seconds.
Okay, I know it was an application, but it was a request.
Request.
Buck votes yes.
Semple votes yes.
Thompson votes yes.
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. That's a unanimous. Thank you, Mark.
Well, thank you, board, for your consideration. I hope next time we get to meet in person.
Okay, that makes all of us. Okay, there's one other piece of business. That's the minutes from whenever that was, June something.
June 24th. Minutes of June 24th.
I'll move to approve the minutes of June 24th as submitted.
Dave Veach seconds.
Okay, we need to vote. Buck,
Yes.
Paul,
Semple votes yes.
Dave,
Votes yes also.
Dave,
Veach votes yes.
and I vote yes. Thank you, one and all. Not so bad. Not so bad. Until next time, when we have the pleasure, I believe, of continuing Mr. Jackaloni's request.
Continuing?
Well, we continued it. We continued it until August 12th.
We will have the continued hearing on it. Is
Well, you can't. We continued it and we voted yes. You already voted. We voted yes to continue. At any rate,
Would
We
you
are all
like a
done.
motion to adjourn?
we are adjourned.
We are adjourned. No vote.
we need a motion and a vote to adjourn, please.
Do we need a roll call still?
Yes, we do.
Okay. All right.
Buck votes yes.
Megan?
Megan votes yes.
Sample
Paul.
votes yes.
Mr. Thompson votes yes.
Beach votes yes.
And I vote yes.
And the
That's
motion was by Paul and the second by Dave, yes?
Correct.
Thank you.